already. Look at that. Facebook has worried me already. Hey, folks, and welcome to WSMP Radio. You just heard Oingo Boingos, No One Lives Forever. And before we get started any further tonight, I got a wonderful crew assembled with me here in the spoiler room to go for our canon fodder episode. Yes, the canon was pulled last month, and we hit Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which spawned the Saw is Family Month, which is what you're getting this month. And yeah, I've got a great group here, very appropriate for tonight's film, which is aptly named Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Yes, it is a canon film. Hard to believe, I know, but brace yourself. You'll find out why, I'm sure, during this podcast. And first off, she is back with us in the spoiler room. So glad to have her here. Horror retrospective. It is none other than Kara. How are you doing today? And thank you for joining us.
I'm doing okay. Glad to be back. It's been a while.
It's been a little while, but we're glad to have you in here, and especially for tonight's film. So I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this wild and crazy movie. And next to Kara is none other than Angelique. She's with us, also a horror aficionado. So glad to have you in the room with us, Angelique. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. And for this episode, since I'm short, you can't call me Stretch, but you call me Squash.
Can't call you Stretch. We'll call you Squash. We'll call you Angelique, okay? I don't want to call you Squash, because then I just think of the vegetable, and it gets awkward. Then,
like it did just now.
Like it did just now, because I said that. I'm okay, and yes, my right hand man with me, taking this journey, always stopping by the spoiler room. Always a pleasure to have him, Mr. Ian Simmons. Hello, Ian. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm enjoying some coffee from my official spoiler room mug.
Yes.
I think it never shows up on camera properly. I'm just going to do this. There you go.
There you go.
I finally hit it right. Yeah.
Nice.
Get you some.
Well, I have a beverage as well, and we do have merch going on. And yes, there is a shameless shill of merchandise if you're interested. Link will be on all. It's like everywhere, so you'll find it, and there might even be a code somewhere that gives you a discount. So enough of that shilling tonight. Let's talk Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 from 1986 from Canon Films, directed, yes, by Tobe Hooper. So they tell me anyway.
This is not another Poltergeist situation.
No, this is not another.
Both films.
He did direct both films. And so tonight, Kara, if you don't mind, would you mind giving us the synopsis of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, or at least try to?
I'm pretty sure I'm not going to do it justice, but it's a very weird, bizarro film that just really doesn't seem to take itself too seriously. It still follows the story of the cannibal family, but it takes a lot of interesting twists and turns. I know it centers on, two college kids that get murdered at the beginning, and then it just kind of becomes this vendetta between the sheriff and the family, and there's a whole bunch of crazy stuff from then on.
That's a good way to put it. It's really hard to put this film into words, because you're right. It doesn't do this script justice. Angelique, do you remember when you first saw TCM2?
Yeah, it was right after I got my first copy of Joe Bob Goes Back to the Drive-In, and I was getting big into my Joe Bob research.
Sure.
And then him talking about his cameo in this, and of course, by that time I loved Texas Chainsaw Massacre more than anything. So then I was like, Mom, you gotta see it. Give me number 2. And the rest is history.
Yeah, unfortunately his part was cut, but hey,
Yeah.
I did get to see it on the Blu-ray, which I have up there, that I got at Dollar Tree. So
I've been searching for the Blu-ray everywhere, and I can't find it.
Wait,
really?
which Blu-ray was it? Was it the Shout Factory one, or was it
no?
the regular?
It's the regular MGM one
Mm.
that was released. It's not the Shout Factory one. I wish I had the Shout Factory one.
Because that one is like $70.
Kara, what about you? Do you remember when you saw TCM2?
I want to say, not that I'm trying to brag, but I have very vague memories of my family going to the theater and watching it, and I only remember the opening scene on the highway with the corpse with the chainsaw, and then I remember the ending scene with Stretch and the chainsaw, and I think I fell asleep in between the rest of it.
Now, when you say your family went to go see this, like, how old were you? This is not like, hey, we're gonna go see the Shaggy Dog, kids. No, this is Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Yeah, I'm I can't even remember how old this movie is. I'm trying to pull up my IMDb, but I know I was
35.
It's from 86. So
okay. So I was 4.
Actually, there you go. It's celebrating its 35th anniversary, and I didn't even plan it like that. So look at that.
Wow.
35th anniversary of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. And we welcome our viewers, the 3 of them that we have tonight, to listen us gab about TCM2. Now, Ian, when was the first time you watched this film? You recently watched it even for your show, but
as I mentioned, I think last week I talked to Scout Tafoya, who's a film critic and a film essayist, and he wrote a book called Cinemophagy, which is about it's a complete Tobe Hooper retrospective, and it's fascinating. But we talked about Texas Chainsaw 2 for the 35th anniversary, and I'm very happy to be talking about it again, because this is a movie that I saw it when I was younger. I didn't fully get it. And then even when I was an adult, like 10 or so years ago, I watched it. And I was like, I still don't get the charm. But then watching it within the last month plus, I really tuned into it. And I think part of that was because I was reading about, more about Hooper and getting on his wavelength as a filmmaker, because I've seen a lot of his stuff, but I haven't seen nearly as much as I probably should have at this point. But this movie is bonkers. It's nuts. And I just love that it's like the difference between Alien and Aliens. Now in that situation, it was 2 different filmmakers taking on the same kind of material. But in this, it's the guy who created this movie coming back, 8 or 9 years later, or whatever the difference was, to do a sequel that's completely unrecognizable as, coming from the same guy. So yeah, I'm all about it. And I think it's criminal that this thing isn't more appreciated.
And I think part of it is the same thing. When I first watched this when I was younger, probably too young to watch it, I didn't quite get it either, because I was a big fan of the original. And then you get this and you're like, whoa, you're like, this is different, and what's funny is it's deemed as a comedy horror. Okay, it's deemed as a parody horror. I've seen many, but watching it, I'm like, this fits right nestled in with the rest of the mid-'80s horror that was intended to be more serious. So I'm like sitting here going, is this kind of a Room or Birdemic after the fact, where the director went, no, I actually meant it to be funny. Ha ha. I mean,
more to do with the maximum overdrive amount of white powder that was going around.
The what? Oh, the white power, the cocaine. Yeah, in the 80s.
The equal amount. Yeah, in Maximum Overdrive. That was a cocaine fueled frenzy of a movie. This one was too.
To clarify, just so we don't get knocked off the internet, we're talking about white powder and not white power.
Yeah,
there's no white power going on in Texas.
No, it's okay. It just lagged a little bit, and so it was like you said. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't remember there being.
That doesn't sound right. Sorry.
Nice. But you're right. I mean, this film opened. This is the thing with Canon, and this is what I love it ended up being their downfall. And I'm going to say it. I'm going to shill it again. The Canon Film Guide 1, which is the rise of Canon from 80 to 84. Austin Trunick is right now working on his middle section, which is just huge with all the interviews he has about Cannon's middle tier where they had money and they were throwing it at any property they could buy it on, to try to survive because they were starting to get on the ropes. So you had the He-Man and the Master of the Universe that they were throwing. Well, here you have Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and they had the money, and I don't know the whole story, and that's why I can't wait for his second book to read about it, because the Cannons threw a bunch of money into this. I mean, this has a huge budget if you look at the production that you have, especially compared to the first one. So when they say horror comedy, I'm like, I don't know. It feels like a regular 80s campy horror film in many ways, with that little extra level of, knowledge because you get some repeated scenes from the first one. But I don't know. Ian, what do you think? Do you think this was intended all along to be a parody of it? I haven't watched the research or done the behind the scenes stuff, so I know I fail there. I apologize to all, but
no, I don't think it's a parody. It's kind of hard to pin down. I feel like it's a horror movie mostly because it's got, people in distress being chased by maniacs with power tools. But I was never scared by this movie. I don't think it's a scary movie. It's an intense and a weird movie. It's one of those things where you can watch it and just feel like, I'm glad I'm not them. I feel like if I was in that radio station when Leatherface busts out of the closet or the chainsaw, yeah, I'd be terrified out of my wits. But it's just such a strange movie that I can't. There was nothing that creeped me out. Like the original film is, I think, creepy and scary in a lot of ways. This is just its complete own animal. I think where the satire element comes in is more sort of misunderstanding what Tobe Hooper was trying to say with this movie. It is more of a political cultural satire, but that doesn't mean that it's supposed to be, jokey, funny, ha. Now, Bill Mosley, yeah, he's definitely a character with, him playing Chop Top. And he is a funny character, but that doesn't mean that the movie he is in is a comedy.
Yeah, I think there's a distinction with that. What about you, Kara? Would you say that, this is satire, but not necessarily supposed to be like a ha, oh, that's hilarious that he just pounded that guy with a hammer.
I would say, yeah, satire on multiple levels. It seems to poke fun at other horror films. It even parodies the Breakfast Club, the poster. Right. Everybody's all in the same poses.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm wondering, and that's always the thing too, between satire and parody. Angelique, what about you? Satire, but maybe not necessarily parody, because when you think parody, you kind of think Zucker Brothers and Airplane, and this is not that.
Yeah, this absolutely is not that. This is, it is a political satire in that it's making a statement, but as far as the actual film goes, it's intended to freak you out. Maybe not the deep, visceral way that the first one did, but it's still shocking.
Well, we talked a bit about Ed Gein last week and the kind of the furniture that he made out of people. One thing you really get a sense of looking at was it Texas Battleland is the rundown amusement park that they've made their lair into. If you look around at those decorations, the thing that stuck out to me the most the last time I watched it was in the extreme foreground. I think it might have been the dinner scene or leading up to it. There is a full-on Slim Pickens from Dr. Strangelove riding the bomb, complete with the cowboy hat, down into to blow up the world. That's genius, and it goes to show the kind of pathos of these characters. Yeah, these people are completely demented. This is how they interpret pop culture, how they pay homage to it. If you were in that lair, again, you'd be completely freaked out because those are actual human remains that they've used to build this satirical sculpture.
Yeah, you still have your human remains furniture in here, so they keep that. In fact, there's a whole hallway of dioramas made of corpses in different scenes and poses, So one of the
said it before, I'll say it again. Leatherface is an artiste.
He is an artiste, and yeah, Chop Top is supposed to be the twin brother of the hitchhiker that got,
Nubbins,
crushed.
yeah.
Nubbins. who shows up in here in corpse form in a funny yet very disturbing. The opening scene in this film really sets everything up. They've strapped the corpse of Nubbins to Leatherface, and you're like, this is funny yet also highly disturbing at the same time, because you got the corpse all like, you know.
Yeah, because when you first see it, you don't know if he's just alive or
right.
Well, because you don't even really know that that's supposed to be the hitchhiker when you first see him.
Right.
I honestly, it wasn't until I watched the DVD, or was it Blu-ray? I think I got a DVD of this movie that I was able to look and say, oh yeah, you can see the birthmark, and you can see the mirrored birthmark on Bill Mosley's face. There's all this detail that, you have to watch this movie a few times to figure out everything that's going on, because it's definitely a kitchen sink type of movie. But yeah, I love that's supposed to be him, and you can blink and miss the reference to the hitchhiker, and it still works because it's still crazy that they have a corpse, tied to Leatherface. It makes it even cooler once you find out who it was supposed to be.
Right. And then when you see Chop Top, you're like, wait, is he supposed to be? Then that tosses you first. You're like, wait, did he survive somehow being crushed under the wheels? Or
which, he's got the plate in his head, so you could think that, oh, maybe that's how they fixed him. But no, that's, yeah.
After all, Grandpa was still alive in the original from sucking blood. So, and we get Grandpa in here.
Yay, Grandpa.
Well, he does it best, though. My son, who watched this one with me, because he watched the first one with me, and he said he liked this one a little bit better. We're like, yeah, they tout about Grandpa being the one-hit killer. Both times we've seen him do it, he has not one-hit killed anything.
Oh. It's a thing that always rubbed me the wrong way about this movie is the makeup on Grandpa. I mean, it's really well done, but it's so exaggerated and almost cartoonish. What it reminds me of, I know I saw the movie I'm about to reference after I saw Texas Chainsaw, so it's not a ripoff, but they were kind of doing the same thing. What they did with Dan Aykroyd in Nothing But Trouble.
Oh, you had to bring that movie up. You just.
I'm saying, I think there's another family connection there.
It could be another family connection. Cara, did it surprise you with this, considering the amount of time between the films that they were able to get basically at least, Jim Seidow back for that? I mean, you got at least some actors back for this from the original. I mean, Jim Seidow as the cook shows up and you're like, wait, what? For a film like this, does it surprise you that he shows up in here?
I don't think it's really much of a surprise. I think, especially for those who had already formed a following around the first movie, it's more to be expected. Kind of like they'd be disappointed if there wasn't some sort of reference or some little nod somewhere.
I'm surprised Kane Hodder didn't come back.
Wait,
not Kane Hodder. The original Leatherface, Gunnar Hansen. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Wait, was Kane Hodder in the original?
No, I get the two. I always get the names mixed up. I'm horrible with names. Okay, you're lucky all that I remember all of yours. That's why we have the labels on here, so I can remember everyone's name.
Well, you keep calling me. You've been calling me Ian for years. My name's actually Fred. Sorry, no.
Shit. I knew it. Damn it. But well, actually, I'll say who the surprise is, and Dennis Hopper showing up in a film like this. I mean, he doesn't have the huge, and he's been in, like, I know, Blue Velvet and that, but still, this is not a film. I'd say Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, you don't think, oh, Dennis Hopper, sure. And he shows up in here.
If I remember correctly, this might have been from the Tobe Hooper commentary, or maybe it was somewhere else I heard. But I think I heard that he had seen Dennis Hopper in a restaurant having lunch, and he just walked up to him and said, "Hey, you want to be in this in Texas Chainsaw 2?" And he's like, "Sure, man." He's just on set.
I love Lefty in this. Angelique, what do you think of Lefty in this?
I love him. He's so intense, and he's down for revenge, man. When he goes to that horse shop and he's looking at the chainsaws, and then he goes to test him and just goes ham on that log outside.
I loved how they connected him to the original in this on how this is, you know, family connection. Cara, what'd you think of good old Dennis Hopper in this film?
I thought he was a great choice. I mean, he's definitely versatile. You obviously beat me to Blue Velvet, but
Oh, sorry.
seeing that he can do that, I'm like, it doesn't really surprise me. It's that he can just probably go to like 0 to 5,000 in under 2 seconds.
Yeah, it's just wild though still, because you think of his pedigree and you're just like, yeah, he's got the crazy films, but he's also known, you know, he's done so many films, veteran actor, and then he takes a role like this. You're just like, but yeah, he adds a little bit of extra oomph to it. I mean, Caroline Williams though is great. I liked her in this quite a bit, though my son couldn't get over just how much they have her scream. Mad props to her, because like a third to a half of her part is just her screaming this way. She could not have had the vocal cords after this.
Screaming and flirting with Leatherface.
Oh my God. Let's talk about that scene, because I forgot about that scene. I totally forgot. And suddenly I'm looking at it going, oh, this is a wonderful love story for where, you know, Leatherface finds love or lust, or, you know, finds
discovers
out
girls.
it's only been 13 extra years, but he's finally discovered women. Yeah. Because the setup for the scene is so weird at first. You have Leatherface and he's cutting into the ice instead of her. And you know, if he just went like this, she's done. That's it. Movie over. But he's cutting up the ice and the soda, and she's getting more and more soaked and more soaked and wet, and kind of got the wet look to it, even though she's, you
Very
know, scared.
Sports Illustrated cover.
She's got the wet look to her, and all of a sudden he stops and he's like, huh, and she picks up on this and like, oh, you're good, and I'm just like, I feel very awkward.
The power of Daisy Dukes.
I'd say it was a gamble though. Like she's obviously clever, and she caught on, and she used her wiles to try and get herself out of something, but he could have just totally interpreted left field and just split her right down the middle. I don't know. That was kind of ballsy in my opinion.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, at that point, like, what does she have to lose? I guess.
Yeah.
Well, except for her head, or you know, her midsection. Yeah, it reminded me kind of like what happened at the end of, was it Friday the 13th Part 2 in the cabin, where Ginny realizes that she can put on, you know, Mrs. Voorhees' sweater, and because Jason's like about to, you know, attack her with that pickaxe, and kind of flip the psychology around. Yeah, it's a weird scene because it's incredibly disturbing, but it's also shot in such a way that it is, you know, it's erotic as hell. I mean, you've got the sweat, you know, on Caroline Williams. You know, as Angelique mentioned, the Daisy Dukes are practically a supporting character in this role, in this scene. But you're also like, I shouldn't be seeing this. This is wrong and a half.
I have conflicting feelings about this entire scene.
Yeah.
Angelique, do you think we're supposed to though? Do you think this is just kind of, it's like it's just a weird scene, and the thing is, it's not just a gimmick, because it actually plays a vital role in the plot later on, where she doesn't get aced when she's at Texas Battlefield.
Right.
I mean, what'd you think of this whole subplot a bit of sex and the Leatherface?
Well, I mean, don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
Even if it's a dust jacket.
made of human skin.
Made of human skin. I mean, it was smart, because it didn't go all the way. It would have been a thing if, you know, he'd have chainsawed her shirt off and then there's boobs and then there's blood. You know, that would have been exploitive.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this, you know, she's, you know, Lefty told her, okay, they feed on fear, don't be afraid. Well, I'm scared out of my ever-loving mind. What can I do now? Oh, he's looking at my crotch. Well, here we go, you know.
Let's just sword and stone this and see how it goes.
I like that phrase, sword and stone this. That should be on a t-shirt. And then what's interesting too is he doesn't kill her afterwards, and he has a moment which is also awkward, but I feel bad because you know what came to mind when he actually kind of, you know, is just sit there with the chainsaw and he, you know, pops, so to speak, is I'm like, Forrest Gump. The scene where he's with Jenny.
We all know the scene, Mark.
Yes. Okay. But I couldn't help but think, I don't know why that, I'm just like, oh, you know. And then I started thinking of Forrest Gump as Leatherface, and then I'm like, no, let's get back to the movie.
Well, no, I was going to say that the ages might line up. When was this? Haley Joel Osment has grown up. He's moved out of the house. Forrest decides to move down to Texas, and shrimp thing doesn't work out so well down there, so they have to go to barbecue.
Well, it works. We've got mud bugs in Texas.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I love this.
Leatherface jerking his gherkin was not at all what I expected.
Oh. It's I was thinking of beef jerky. So you got it right. Exactly.
Well, what's worse is he's not touching himself, but he's got the chainsaw in front of him, and he's
he is touching himself behind the chainsaw.
Oh, is he? I couldn't.
You actually kind of get a Franks and Beans slip.
Oh, do you really? Wow,
Yeah.
Angelique has studied this scene. No, I didn't realize that. Maybe I was trying not to quite focus on it because I was just like, "This is okay." Any time now.
I didn't think it went on. Like, you know, I remembered him putting the chainsaw up her leg and then against her shorts. I did not remember that he took that opportunity to, you know, commit a penal act.
I must have missed that. Maybe I was too focused on the chainsaw waving up and down to notice that was going on. But
you hear the suit, you hear the little flappy noises, and then he, you know, turns on the chainsaw because that's when things are finished.
And the thing is, again, though, this storyline, as awkward as this is, it plays it later, as I mentioned, because we have Caroline Williams, her character, Stretch. She falls down the hole at the battle. You know, whoever designed this, no wonder it got condemned. This amusement park. She falls down a hole quite a bit, ends up in the pantry of the folks. And it actually plays in later, again, to the emotions of Leatherface for her survival. And I thought it was interesting that we hear people talk about final girls a lot. You hear about Laurie Strode. You even hear about, you know, the first, you know, final girl in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Marilyn. You hear about all the... But Caroline Williams, for a final girl in here, I thought she was fantastic in this. Her character, you know, and I think sometimes she gets overlooked at this because I watch this going, she's awesome. I want to see her in another, you know.
Well, it's an interesting point because, you know, you usually hear about final girls in terms of like conventional slashers, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre has not usually been that. You can also think of Ashley Lawrence from Hellraiser. She was a final girl from that movie. But that, again, people tend to think of final girls in a very specific context, and a lot of actresses don't get their due.
Yeah, and she gets to have a fun dance with the chainsaw, which I, you know, later on as well. But, you know, the whole love story, so that's how she survives, I thought was an interesting angle to take with this. You wouldn't think Leatherface had any type of feelings whatsoever, but he's actually exploring that, whether or not, you know, it's ooky still, but still you wouldn't have thought Leatherface, this icon, what became this iconic killer, as having, you know, other feelings outside of I want to cut you up and then throw you in the barbecue.
Well, I mean, he's been sheltered and all that. Sorry, go ahead, Kara.
Oh no, sorry. I was going to say it's not really a bad way of looking at it, because Leatherface is obviously, at least in his own world, he's younger than everyone else. So it's kind of like his coming of age. So just you kind of realize he's not as bad as everyone else either, because he kind of tries to help Stretch. And even though he kind of put someone else's face over her to mask her, which I thought that scene was hilarious, but he actually kind of goes against what we're used to seeing from this family. And he shows that he cares about someone other than just, you know, flailing his crotch and his chainsaw around.
He does. And you know, your thought with that too, of making your slasher have a heart.
Well, it's also another weird thing about this movie, and something that differentiates it from the original. You see Leatherface's eyes. Mm-hmm. Like in the first Texas Chainsaw, you get glimpses of his eyes, but they're almost like these little black dots that are recessed behind the skin of the mask. In this, his eyes are very expressive. They're very big, and he's got that tongue that's constantly like whipping around his mouth. So he looks like a cartoon character, which kind of fits with the rest of the aesthetic of this movie. So he's almost, for as horrific as the stuff that he's doing, the real villainy is down to Jim Sydow as the cook and Chop Top. Mm-hmm. Leatherface, as Kara mentioned, is almost an innocent in this movie. It's hard to forget that. Or it's easy to forget that, considering the amount of meat and blood and entrails that come out of that wall that Dennis Hopper cuts open in the lair, just how many people these folks have savagely murdered.
Yeah, there is that. They've killed quite a bit. And what's funny is this film then throws a different perspective on Leatherface in the original. Wouldn't you say, Angelique? In that you look at this going, well, maybe in the first one he was just a victim of family.
Well, I mean, they did boss him around. He did have to cook dinner. He did have to serve dinner.
Mm-hmm.
He only really started killing people when they broke into his house.
That's true. You know, I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is really about, you know, the stand your ground type of law that you have for people breaking into your house. If they hadn't broken into his house, he wouldn't have.
You know?
It's home invasion. He doesn't know if they're there to kill him, even though they have no weapons and he's got a chainsaw. Doesn't matter. He's afraid.
And honestly, I mean, this one is kind of a revenge flick, if you think about it, because those two assholes at the start of the movie, you know, almost got them into a car accident. So this is a road rage revenge movie.
That's true, because it does open and they play chicken, and these guys, it's funny, my son asked, she's like, do people actually go around shooting signs? And I'm like, have you traveled in North Wisconsin? I'm like, I don't know, Kara, do people down in Texas, do they go around shooting signs?
I don't know so much about shooting signs. I know I think stealing signs is still a thing. Taking a baseball bat to people's mailboxes is still a thing.
What about you, Angelique? You're in the South there. They shooting up signs.
Old signs over here.
A lot of signs with some holes.
Yeah, mostly stop signs. Because you tell us to do.
Why would you want to stop? Yeah, that just, you shoot it enough, it'll not say stop anymore. And then you can just keep
boss of me, son.
But you're right. I mean, in the beginning, all they're doing is like, these guys are a-holes, so they're just taking care of these guys who nearly killed them by playing a game of chicken. So I mean, at least that kill you can say is self-defense, kind of, even though you chop their head off with a chainsaw. But still,
Well, they were provoked.
there you go. They were provoked.
I mean, the rule number one around here, and probably in your neck of the woods as well, down there in Texas, but if a person has an American flag emblazoned upon the body of their vehicle, leave them alone. You don't want anything to do with it, especially if there's truck nuts involved as well. If you got the photo of the American flag and the truck nuts, all bets are off. Don't even make eye contact because they take that as a sign of aggression. Just go about your business.
You might get a guy who's got a corpse strapped to himself cutting you up.
Yeah. Well, don't look at him crossways because then you're done.
You're done. Now, this film has just got so much going on with it. We get Leatherface and his sexual awakening, and then we got Sideow and his character, the cook, which Angelique, we find out the cook's been winning that chili contest for the last couple of years now.
I might have to plead the fifth on this one because, I mean, good meat's good meat. And if you notice, that chili did not have beans in it, so right on.
Are beans a sin in chili?
It's not chili if it has beans.
No.
Beans if it has beans in it.
Cara, where do you stand? You're the tiebreaker on this. Beans or no beans? If there's beans in it, is it chili?
I'm with the unpopular opinion. I like beans in my chili. If you want to throw peppers and stuff in there too, I'm cool with it, especially onions and garlic.
Ooh.
See, Angelique, this is a completely alien perspective to me. I've never had chili without beans.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I have, but that's
I guess I've been doing it wrong, I guess.
I have, but Hormel sells the no beans and the beans, and the no beans are usually cheaper. So
well, yeah, but the no beans, that's typically in the commie section. I avoid it at all costs. What? No.
There are three schools of chili. Now, around here, you say chili, it's expected for there to be beans. In other necks of the woods, I guess, there's your factions within factions. You've got, they call it either chili, it has no beans in it, it's just meat and onions and tomatoes and whatnots. Or it's called chili sauce or hot dog chili that doesn't have the beans in it. So here I go down. Don't get me started on food and etymology or we'll be here all night.
I just love the fact we've turned a Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 film into a foodie conversation. So
here's the thing.
It makes perfect sense. It's a cannibal film. That's
right. It's true.
But here's the power of chili. I actually want to eat a chili dog right now. I don't care where it came from or what's on it.
Well, you're from Illinois, so of course you would. So no, just kidding. You want that Chicago style, right?
Hey, don't get me started on the debate about ketchup over here. People say you can't have ketchup on a hot dog. I'm like,
ketchup doesn't go on a traditional Chicago dog, but if you want a hot dog, you're welcome to put whatever you'd like on it.
I've almost seen fistfights break out about, over people like with any kind of hot dog and ketchup in the vicinity. They're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, it's a hot dog. I like ketchup. Now, I don't put it on the Chicago dog because that is redundant because of the tomatoes, but yeah.
Sure.
Anyway, back to Texas Chainsaw 2.
It is cannibal. Welcome Cooking with Cannibals tonight. What's interesting is the whole thing with him winning the second year with the Chili Fest. It is a funny gimmick and how he talks about the meat, and that's his whole thing is always the meat, and how they've got this year where I guess it's the Oklahoma-Texas rivalry in College Town for their football game or whatever. And he's talking about, this is where we could make money, but they're always screwing the small businessman. That's after he takes a chainsaw in the ass. But what's funny, it reminded me of Ed Gein. Mm-hmm. And hear me out on this. You guys may know the story, but Ed Gein, before it all came out, was known to have some of the best venison in the county. he used to have venison that he used to give his neighbors. Venison.
Mm-hmm.
Now, but here's the thing. I think it was established last week that Ed Gein only killed like 2 or 3 people.
Sure.
And he was a grave robber otherwise.
Mm-hmm. He got fresh grave. It was fresh graves,
body.
but yeah.
Oh, God.
Last time, Ian, you use every part.
The
meat is dry aged. So.
Yeah. And in this case, apparently it makes you good chili the last 2 years in a row for the chili competition, which has the most wonderful yet grotesque trophy I've ever seen for a contest.
Well, it was his chili in the bowl on top.
I know, but
it's like drooping over the sides. It looks like, bad White Castle After Effects.
And he's hugging it, and the chili's pouring on his suit, which, I'm sorry. In this one, the cook, who the cook reminded me of in this one more so than the first one? He reminded me of Lloyd Kaufman. He had a bit of an Uncle Lloyd-y energy to him. I'm like, if Troma made this would be the role Lloyd would be in.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
Well, he's still alive, so they could make a new Texas Chainsaw and have him be the cook or the Arlie Ermey character or whoever they want him to be.
This film is just it's definitely different than the first one, but it's so much fun. It's so odd. I have such a bigger appreciation for this film, especially the production. I mean, Kara, the production of this film, especially considering the first one was shot on such a shoestring budget, what'd you think of the overall production and the quality of this movie in general for what it was?
For the sequel?
Yeah, for the sequel.
I think it did very well. I couldn't. I mean, it just looked like just a regular production to me. It didn't seem that it was lacking or overflowing in anything. And I mean, the effects were great. I have no complaints on that. That's usually what makes or breaks a film, even if the story is good.
Well, and it was Savini who did. I forgot it was Savini who did the effects on this. So, who showed up in a cutscene which was deleted of where they apparently on their way after they take out the yuppies in the car, they drive into a parking section where there's a whole rally or riot going on, football riot amongst a bunch of yuppie college guys, and they show up and they show up in the ice cream truck, and the cook makes a disparaging comment, and they all come over there, and then Leatherface jumps out of the back of the truck and starts slicing guys in a wonderfully gory, effects-ridden scene to where even Tom Savini gets killed. He gets his hand cut off, and the hand, before it dies, gives Leatherface the middle finger. It's a beautiful scene.
That just sounds completely out of place with the rest of
well, he cut it.
They don't like attracting attention to themselves, right? I guess that's, yeah.
Well,
so
and
weird.
And they cut it for pacing, apparently, according to the Blu-ray. There's actually another scene after that where they decide to go to the movie theater, and they drop a line as they're driving, and that's where the Joe Bob comes in, because apparently two Texas socialites they got for the film, and Joe Bob are talking about exploding titties. That's a quote. I'm not trying to be vulgar or harsh. That's Joe Bob talks about exploding titties, to quote him. And he gives a rating for Leatherface's chopping up of the two socialites. He stands there and he goes, 3 stars. That's some serious saw foo. And I'm like,
I got to look these scenes up, man. That sounds wild.
The Joe Bob scene is online, I think, on YouTube. You can find it. But
it was, what is it? The grotesque version of DVD.
But the footage is definitely rough. They couldn't find a really good print, and they didn't clean it up. So actually, it was really weird. In the one cutscene they had with where he takes out the college kids, there's no chainsaw sound effect.
Oh,
it's very surreal to see him come up and raise the chainsaw, and it's like dead silent. You're just like, this is weird. So yeah, there were a few cutscenes because of that. And apparently in the final scene as well, there's a cutscene where she goes crazy. And I love this. I loved this whole final act because it's so bad shit when she escapes and she's being chased by Chop Top, and they go up to the balcony to where Grandma was with the chainsaw. And she takes out Chop Top with the chainsaw. Apparently, after he falls into the tube is when the explosion was actually supposed to happen, and his clothes get shot out of the tube. But my son, who's watching this, who can watch and scroll because he was really interested in the history of this, apparently Chop Top was supposed to survive. The original cut, his clothes get shot out of the tube, and she does the chainsaw dance beautifully. And the reason the cut that made theatrical, they cut that scene out was because they were supposed to imply Chop Top survives. So in the first cut, he dies, he explodes, because they were going to come up with the All-American Chainsaw Massacre, or All-American Massacre, I think it was called, which Chop Top was going to be the main antagonist in that one.
Because Leatherface had the chainsaw through his stomach, and he blew up down there in the lair. I'm kind of glad that never came to fruition.
I would have loved to see Caroline Williams' character Stretch just go bonkers. Cara, what'd you think of this final ending of the way they did this whole ending scene with Chop Top and Stretch and their final like chase fight and the way it ends?
I think it was well done, especially as he's chasing her up ladders and stuff. It keeps the tension. Is he going to get her? Is he not going to get her? Is he admiring her booty as he chases her up the stairs?
He's still cutting with the straight razor too, just like his brother did to the original. But at the same time, it's a bit duller straight razor. I don't think he sharpened that. I think that was his brother's straight razor because he cut her up, but he didn't cut up much. It was like a lot of surface cuts. So they still hurt, I imagine. But Angelique, how did you think of this film ending the way it did? Did you like that?
Oh yeah, it was beautiful. And that would have been a perfect sequel. Lady Leatherface. She's got.
It sounds very Lady Frankenstein.
Lady Snowblood, Lady Leatherface. Let's do it.
That's a better title than All-American Chainsaw Massacre or whatever it would. Lady Leatherface. Yeah.
That might have actually been a better third film than the one we actually got.
I know.
Which we will be talking about next week. So we will be talking about the Leatherface 3 next week, which had the best teaser trailer known to man. And I wish the film would have delivered like it did. The teaser trailer.
My other complaint is it wasn't even filmed in Texas.
Oh, yeah. This one was still filmed in Texas, wasn't it? Texas Chainsaw
It was.
2?
Parts of it were in Austin, and I'm not sure about all of the other locations. Battlelands was, the Chainsaw Store was in Austin, which is actually a bar now.
Oh, is it really? I was going to ask, is that still a chainsaw shop?
With that old man there, just make him say, "Oh, my aching banana."
Yeah, it's a bar called the Mean-Eyed Cat. It's Johnny Cash inspired, and they still have the log or the stump that Dennis Hopper cut into.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's beautiful. So is Battlelands, was that an actual place?
Yeah, that was a real theme park. I'm not good with my Texas locations, but I want to say it was heading up between Waco, like on the back roads between Dallas and Waco.
Yeah, I was wondering if that was. I'm like, where'd they find that place? Because I wanted to go there. I'm like, this place looks. I mean, without the bodies and the corpses and the human furniture, but you know, the diorama. So you could, I guess, turn it into that attraction. it's probably a condos now.
It's last I heard, it's a trailer park.
Oh, is it? Well, okay.
Even better.
I was shooting high with condos. I didn't want to say. Didn't want to go and say trailer park, but okay. But you know. Actually, I'm glad you mentioned that chainsaw scene, though, the shop, though, because I loved that scene in all honesty. And the fact that he uses them in the finale, we get a chainsaw fight, an actual, you know, they're building up to it. You're like, are we going to get it? Aren't we? Did the chainsaw fight pay off? Because you know they were building up to it.
Yeah, the chainsaw fight did pay off, and I was glad to see it because there's a stretch, and that's not a pun, towards the end of the movie where they are just recreating the climax of Texas Chainsaw 1 with a bigger budget, complete with the, you know, grandpa and the sledgehammer and the bucket and all that. I was like, oh, I forgot about this. This is where it gets kind of boring. Yeah. But then Dennis Hopper shows up, and there's the chainsaw fight and the chainsaw running through Leatherface, and there's that scene which, again, it's, as you mentioned, Mark, the heroine being chased around with a straight razor by the maniac. But in this, at least, they're running up this weird, you know, these mountainous stairs. There's that bizarre shrine. So even though you're watching what you've seen before, you're watching in a way that you hadn't seen before. And then at the end, it's Caroline Williams with the chainsaw dancing around instead of Leatherface. So it really does work. It's a hell of an ending to the movie.
It is. Angela, do you like this whole chainsaw fight? Did it pay off for you?
Oh, it's epic.
Yeah.
It's epic. You see the clash of the saws, Dennis Hopper being Dennis Hopper. You know, what more can you ask for, honestly?
Well, and then you got Leatherface. He's still fighting with a chainsaw hanging from his belly. And you're like, you know, in some movies, you get the gimmick where they've got all these weapons and you see the hero use two.
Mm-hmm.
But in this one, no, he uses the short ones and suddenly it's two chainsaw fight against one. You're just waiting for Grandpa to get cut. I'm surprised that Grandpa didn't get the chainsaw, even though at 137 years old.
He didn't jump out and gum someone's ankle.
Hey, speaking of everlasting, did you notice that Franklin's flashlight still worked?
Yes.
Wow.
I don't know what was more disturbing with that. The fact that Franklin's flashlight still worked, or the fact that the family felt the need to drag around Franklin's corpse in the wheelchair.
Oh,
well, they're hoarders, you know.
Yeah.
They're hoarders.
Well, what I thought was interesting was the whole kind of retconning of Dennis Hopper's, because I guess this was in a cut scene where they explored more what the relationship was between him and
Franklin,
Sally and Franklin.
Right, yeah.
Because in the opening crawl of Texas Chainsaw 1, they talk about Franklin and Sally Hardesty. In Texas Chainsaw 2, it's Sally Hardesty Enright. And, you know, Lefty Enright, which I think is some kind of a weird pun of left and right. I don't know.
Right.
He mentioned when he sees Franklin, he, you know, mentions like, I think he calls him brother. I don't know.
Yeah, he says brother.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if they're supposed to be brothers or if it's more like just a familial kind of thing. Yeah. Because that would be talk about an age difference. But yeah, there's some kind of a weird relationship there that was never really resolved. But it was just kind of cool to see that little throwback to the wheelchair and the light that still works.
Yeah, when he clicked on the flashlight, I'm like, oh shit, those are good batteries. I mean, then it fades, and you're like, oh, way to go, you wasted the last bit of energy in the.
Well, no, that was Franklin's spirit finally being released because he'd been found.
You know, if this film took itself more seriously, I would say, okay, maybe that's what the filmmaker was going for. But in this case, no, he just, it's just expiring. It's just the last bit of expiration of Franklin. May he rest in pieces. But yeah, this chainsaw fight, Kara, did you like it? Did it pay off? Did you expect more, or was this a good payoff?
I think it was worth the wait. It was a lot of fun, especially they're running all over the place. They're tearing the place up.
Mm-hmm.
There's just all this crazy stuff going on in the background. Everybody has their own individual little fights and stuff.
Yeah, and the cook got cut up the butt, and that actually like to which he uses as a metaphor for small business taking it in the ass. Like, because when I get cut in the butt, that's what I would think of is the commentary on how the small businessman gets the shit.
It's just time to switch to a softer toilet paper.
Will you quit using the Black & Decker chainsaw? Why don't you use Charmin? Charmin is a lot better. But don't squeeze the Charmin.
Don't squeeze
Otherwise,
it.
you don't squeeze it. You'll be in trouble if you squeeze the Charmin. You can't quite squeeze a chainsaw. But anyway, yeah, it's canon. If my understanding is correct on my loose history of it, and that's why I can't wait for the second and third books. Austin, we salute you. Because I want to know the more history, but this is kind of at canons just before they really started to like like they started to fit, they started to just go too big. And this I think is still a solid film. I personally think that this is a wonderful entry into this franchise, which just gets weirder and a bit more disjointed later on. I might do a bonus episode on Next Generation, maybe, because that film just never sat right with me. But apparently our friend Andrew Shearer really likes it. So I'm thinking of doing a mano a mano against him, going, okay, convince me, buddy. Convince me. But, this one, I think canon does it justice. I think we'll just get final thoughts here. Kara, we'll start with you. Your final thought with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Would you recommend it to people? And do you think it's a worthy installment into this large franchise?
I would recommend it to somebody who hasn't seen the original, just that way you don't have any preset expectations. But I would definitely say it's one of those movies you either love it or you hate it. This one had to grow on me, and I absolutely love it now.
Mm-hmm. Angelique, what about you? Your final thoughts? Would you recommend it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure about not having seen the original. If you've seen the original, you're going to like this. I mean, this one's kind of its own animal, except for the few little callbacks to the original, but it's still an enjoyable romp. I mean, there's so much in this that's just really, really great between the strong female character who in the end goes, over the edge, to a trailer park full of guts.
Which again is
yeah.
Which that Caroline, Stretch's ending is different than what we got with the original, because here in the original she went mad from things. You could tell she was going mad in the back of that truck, but she approached it a little bit differently. This one, she's just like, yeah, give me someone else to cut. She's like,
I'm crazy.
Yeah. It's kind of like she embraced it. Like, I'm the queen of the mountain now.
Mm-hmm.
I need some gas for this thing.
She's gonna go off and have little leather-based babies.
Well, that would just get really weird. But
he just outgrows his faces so quickly. I can't keep him stocked up.
What is it, a 1T or a 3T? I mean,
oh my god! Oh my god! I want to see this movie now. I want to see this movie where this mom is putting skin faces.
Babies, we make our dreams come true.
Oh man, that just got twisted and beautiful at the same time. I want to see that movie.
I want to see the Leatherface in a pandemic movie, like of him having to make a mask.
Oh,
he's got the mask. He'd sew it into the human mask. There you go. So
Yeah.
So he's got a leather mask over the face mask.
He's doubly protected.
Yeah, you just kill somebody that's wearing an N95 and then just strip the whole thing.
Yeah, there you go. I loved all the gory effects in this thing. The skinning scene, the fact that GL wakes up with no face.
LG
or LG.
I can't look at. I could never look at TVs the same way again.
Bless him. He just wanted to take her out.
Well, for him, life was not good.
No, no, but he kept his insides inside him. I was fully waiting for the guts to spill out but Leatherface, he only peeled half his body. He didn't, which again, Leatherface, you got to work on your tailorship. If you're going to cut your fabric, you got to make sure you cut your fabric completely and not cut it off too soon.
He needed a left nipple.
He did, yeah. I guess he just needed the left nipple and not both.
He could have just decided. I don't know. Maybe he's just too hairy for my taste. I'll look for something a little less covered.
That's true. That's true. I mean, he is particular, I think, about the skin he wears. Literally. Ian, your final thought with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Oh, it's great. It's not exactly a fun movie. In fact, I feel kind of ooky whenever I, even think about it. But it's its own kind of a weird masterpiece. And I think that really should have stopped after this movie.
I think there's many out there that would agree with you that they should have stopped with this movie. I know after this one, you look at this one, you go, unless you're going to have Stretch be in the next one, there's really no reason to do any more films after that. I mean, you kind of bookended, and granted they could pull a Halloween Kills, sorry to bring it up, but they don't, as far as they're all ended. The whole Sawyer family has been ended at the end of this, and the girl stands alone. The woman stands alone with the chainsaw. So I mean, that's kind of a fitting end to this. I wouldn't mind, but folks, there is a Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, which we will talk about next week. Just one final comment: this film is where the Saw is family came from, because the cook says sex. Nobody knows about sex. Nobody knows about sex. It's unknown. But the Saw is family, which that's one of those lines of dialogue where I'm like, this makes no sense, and yet it does all at the same time, and I have no idea why. But it's definitely different. But
blood is the tie that binds.
That's right. Blood is the tie that binds, as does the rope in the pantry that's in the ground stake. But
it's an immaculate consumption.
Oh,
sorry.
Ooh, we're just gonna chop that up right now. And
yeah, please do. I'm embarrassed.
Yeah, you should be. You should be ashamed of yourself, Ian. So
that's my default state, Mark.
Shame. Thank you so much for our viewers tonight for watching us comment on this interesting cannon fodder film, and it is a cannon fodder film. So hopefully this isn't too loud and blows anyone's eardrums. But since Kara, you haven't shot the cannon yet, Ian has, Angelique has, so you get to shoot the cannon, which basically means we have 5 cannon films left to cover for our specials. You get to pick a random number between 1 and 5. We'll shoot the cannon and see which one it's going to hit. So pick a number between 1 and 5, Kara.
4.
4. She's hitting 4. So hopefully this isn't too loud for you folks. Oh, that's the wrong one. That's the opening. Here it is. Here's the cannon. And let's see what number 4 hit. Well, there you go. again, Ian, I don't know what it is, but our horror guests end up hitting the horror films. Next month, Life Force, the canon classic Life Force.
And another Tobe Hooper film.
And another Tobe Hooper. That is weird.
Oh, the best movie about naked electric space vampires ever made.
Oh, way to spoil it, Angelique.
Oh, come now.
Well, maybe while I'm watching that movie.
So
Sorry.
it'll it'll take me a little bit to come up if I do a monthly theme for next month for circled around Life Force. We will see. But yes, thank you, Kara. You hit Life Force. So that's 2 horror guests we've had who have horror YouTube channels who hit the horror film on the list. That's the last horror film on the list. Go figure. And you hit it. So Life Force is next month's Canon Fodder film. Looking forward to that. That's going to be an interesting discussion, as Angelique already alluded to. So now, as always, this is where you get the license to shill. My guests can tell you where you can find all their wonderful material at. So, Kara, please, the floor is yours. Where can they find your stuff at?
I'm currently sticking to YouTube, so I'm over at youtube.com/horror retrospective. And I'm currently doing kind of like, I was doing radio shows on Fridays. I've kind of switched over and I'm doing audiobooks or novelizations, but I usually have a premiere on Friday. So if it's not a radio show, it's usually a public domain film, and it's just kind of a just for fun thing.
Nice. So check that out. Horror Retros. Some great videos. I enjoy them. When I have time to watch them, I really enjoy them. Give me some perspective on these films. So yeah, check it out. And Angelique, license to shill.
Well, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. I'm at monstersmadnessandmagic.com. We've got some exciting things coming down the pipe. You can also find me at Dread Central. I'm now a contributing writer over there. So I've done a lot of news in the last couple of weeks. Here in the next probably 2 weeks or so, Paranormal Schlockdown is going to be relaunching.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. That should be fun. So awesome. Good to hear. And Ian, I think you got something or two to shill. So please, sir, by all means, shill away.
Okay, I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com. I also have the Kicking the Seat YouTube channel, where I put out movie reviews and filmmaker interviews and roundtables and that kind of stuff several times a week. And tomorrow night, it'll be Wednesday on July, I don't even know what the 13th is,
14th.
Right? 14th.
July
okay.
14th. Yes.
Yeah, I know dates. I'm not dumb. Of course, it sounds like I am. Anyway, by the time you folks are watching this, the live show will be over, but you can catch up with Loki's Midweek Mischief, the weekly Disney Plus Marvel Roundtable recap that we do. It's going to be the season finale episode. And Mark, are you going to join us for that?
I should be able to join you for that if you will have the DC shill, yes.
We love the DC shilling. It's not the same without you. But so by the time you're watching this episode, you can go back and watch that recap, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. And for those of you who are at all interested, pardon my shill, but we do have a Patreon, as I plug at the end of this episode, but we are doing our own recap. I get Honorable Son #1, and we actually do a recap of Loki right after we watch it, and it's interesting to get a perspective of a 21-year-old versus an old man. So, where neither one of us know, he knows more about Marvel than I do, and he made me do homework. So, kids, I don't know who the hell who the hell raised him. I don't know, but I got to talk to that person. But but thank you very much, everyone, for watching, and I would just say good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.